Hello, my fellow Americans. American Granny here. And I know that we're in a critical time in our country, and we've seen already some unprecedented things. But what I want to talk about for this video always has to do with politics in some way, because everything that an American human being lives by is set under policy. So it's going to affect that. But what I want to talk about today is how come we still practice segregation in everything we do. Now lately I see on my television, which it's actually been a wonderful thing to see, because in the 70s and 80s, even the 90s, in the early 2000s, it was not something you would see normally in an ad produced for anything, was black and white people together, and lesbians and gay men together in these commercials. Now this doesn't bother me at all, not at all. And when I see a Maybelline commercial with a drag queen or transsexual or on their way to transgender, it doesn't bother me at all. This is the proper place for the flamboyant. Everybody wants to dress like, a rock star or a movie star, but we really can't afford that kind of thing. Now, I know I'm just an old lady, but this old lady has marched and marches, as I've said in my videos before, for equality for all ethnicity, not just one group. And I'm really hurt when I see Asians talking down white people when white people were in those marches too. And black people talking about how whites have this. I never got my card to be white. And my great-grandmother, well, she would be my great-great-grandmother, was a slave. And the very first slaves in America were not of color. They weren't even Asian. They were white American women. Many of them were Viking women. And we were a good workforce, and we could fight. We could not only plant seed and sow crops while our husbands hunted and found pelts and other things that we needed, wood. And each knew their place, knew their role, not their place. They knew their job. And their job was very dependent on the other doing their job. But the women had no say-so in anything. And we plowed fields, and we carried babies on our backs and in our wombs while we did it, just like so many others did that came here at later dates. Now, I hate slavery, but it's still happening in my country. And the segregation I see being demanded in like Chicago's youth and well, just about everywhere else you go. I don't care what your skin color is. I care what kind of human being you are. And I'm not even sure that our government is run by human beings anymore. I know that sounds like alien. No, I'm talking about they don't act like the human species. They don't act like the rest of us, because they are not the rest of us. And the only people I ever can find, going through all the history I can find using AI and every kind of search engine, the only slaves I can find are still right here in America. In Africa, you're still seeing it a little bit between tribes, but that's being pushed out by a new generation of Africans. And I'm grateful to see them. But in watching their videos, I see they haven't learned from the atrocities that were put on them by other countries. And because they haven't learned that, they're repeating it towards other people of different colors. Now, an Asian woman here was verbally attacked for being white. And that's crazy. Those were some of our first slaves, right along with the blacks. We shipped in blacks from the South and the East Coast out of Africa, and we shipped in Asians in from the West Coast. Sorry, I had a Biden moment. I'm an old lady. I have earned my Biden moments. But I really don't want to see this segregation being used against each other anymore. I look at people as humans. Yeah, they have different colors. But a great God would not create such a limited, beautiful being. And that's the best way I could think of putting it. God didn't create just one kind of flower, He created many. And many of the same species. And we are all one species. And until we can come together under that equality, it can never change. Now, the Spanish absolutely enslaved the Mexican, Guatemalan, and Honduran people, Venezuelan people. And they have fought this oppression, but what took over their countries when they fought and even got close to running or working it through was something worse. They're like a mafia or a cartel, whatever you want to call them today, they're all the same. And they don't want you to see yourselves as equal either. Because if you do, then someone who's not of the same ethnicity or skin color as you can be harmed, and it's okay. I'm tired of this, America. This is what your slave ancestors were fighting against. And not just during the wars. During the time of segregation, after the Civil War. And that lasted into the 70s. So it lasted throughout the late 1800s, all the way to the late 1900s, because I was part of those marches. And my mother told me I was fighting for my fellow man. I know the feminists are going to scream because I use the word man. So are transgenders. I don't care. My fellow being, my fellow man. And I want to see America grow on that. Because if we unite and grow on that foundation, removing the factor of discrimination against color or sexuality, and we come together, we can make our country greater than any other country that exists today. Because if I were to go to China, I would definitely be hit with racism, even though I'm considered the same color as them, but I come from a different country. So I would meet with a lot of racism. Now, my uncle fought in South Vietnam, not North Vietnam or North Korea or any of that. Fought against the North Koreans, put it that way. But he also had to fight against the North Vietnamese, who were the present force in Vietnam of oppression. And he would tell me, he would come home from the bar. Now, I'm in my early teens. I'm kind of an activist along with my mother. And I had a lot of strengths and beliefs. But he really instilled in me the suffering that went on for the Vietnamese people in South Vietnam by the North Korean and North Vietnam, as they called them, Viet Cong. They did not call them Vietnamese, they called them Viet Cong, which held pretty much the north of Vietnam's country. My uncle rescued children from bombing raids that were Vietnamese children. He rescued many citizens to get them out of villages that his platoon knew were either going to be bombed or they were going to be hit with the big bomb. I can't think of the fire bombs. And he was in a community that got hit. Napalm, that's the word I'm looking for. He was in a napalm friendly fire attack because he was in the process of getting people out of the village that were not Viet Cong, but they were South Vietnamese people. And he told me those people were so good. He said, Angel, they really did not care that I came out of America. When my whole platoon was short on supplies, they fed us. They brought us blankets. They brought us comfort that they had barely, and they gave it to us, and they would go without. So many of us, we would start to refuse, but we were told if we refused their generosity, they would be insulted. So we accepted. And he said, you don't understand the value of your freedom in this country. And no part of your freedom should ever be allowed to be challenged. And I can't believe in this day and time, in the year of the millennials, 2000, we are seeing segregation. I hate white people, and I've seen plenty of I hate black people. And I just want to wash all their potty mouths out with soap, like my grandmother and my mother would have done with me as a little girl for cursing. This is not proper. This is not a good or healthy thing. If I see a man and he is broke down, his car's broke down, say at Walmart, I'm going in to go shopping, and my husband is with me because I don't go out by myself anymore. And I live in a community that's pretty safe. But after what was happening in Texas, I didn't feel safe anymore. And though my husband looks 100% Mexican, he's only half, he had to be there to protect me because I was a white woman in a predominantly Mexican, Venezuelan, Honduran, Guatemalan neighborhoods because we were poor. And my husband was making $30,000, $40,000, and at the end that we were in Texas, I think he made $60,000, which is really good money. And we could not get out of the poor neighborhoods. with my husband making that much money in Texas for the most horrible housing, you are charged exasperating rents. It's the best way to put it. This is not freedom from oppression. This is our fellow man making our lives harder so they can make a higher profit, because that is how capitalism works. And I don't want us to be a purely capitalist country. We have enough problems with massive corporations ruining our country by making our politicians finger puppets to do what they want to with the Constitution and even with the the Declaration of Independence. Now, I don't know where your children are getting this white hatred thing, or black hatred, or Asian or Native American in this country. There should be no hatred against any ethnicity. Not supposed to be. And I spent a lot of hours marching in rain, marching in the heat, trying to help my fellow man get the same equality that my mother was asking for in 1970s. Do you care about your country? Or are you just so mad you can't see anything that's happening around you? Because if that's the case, you've got to stop and look at yourself and ask, is your anger changing anything, or is it making it worse? And I can tell you, out of control anger only makes things worse. I have regrets so heavy in my heart from times that I lost control of my own anger. So if that's what's happening, stop blaming a race for it happening. It's happening because you're voting for the wrong reasons. That's what's making it happen. We have the most diverse politicians across the country. Some are white, some are Mexican, some are black, some are from India, and more. The diversity is there and it's growing. Don't get impatient. It takes time to change things correctly. And when you rush it, what happens? You always forget to do something when you rush everything, right? You always forget, damn it, I forgot this, and now I gotta go back and do it all over again. And that, so in this case, those small mistakes of forgetting to do something is costing you more than you can ever imagine. And Gen X, silent generation, will you please shut up? I'm tired of seeing your videos. Go quiet, shut up. You're still bullying just like you did back in high school and grade school. Gen X, stop it. You're grown adults, and in most cases, you're my age. Now, I'm one of the last of the boomers, and I'm proud to be, because it was the boomers that helped fight for equality for women, for blacks, for Asians, for Native Americans. We wanted equality for everybody. Sorry we had the hippie movement. It's still an embarrassment. Bunch of drug-fueled kids. Well, the government wanted that kind of thing to happen again. And so they started with this woke pride agenda. Now, a lot of the young people today aren't a part of that. They're just trying to get an education and get a job. but they're finding out because they are not using a shitload of pronouns, excuse my potty mouth, that they are unable to find work because of DEI, which was the most discriminating, so full of discrimination against everybody except for pride and woke. Now you're looking at this new presidential candidate thinking, oh, a woman's going to get in there, yay. A woman is not always the best one to run the goddamn country. Excuse my potty mouth. It depends on the woman, not her skin color, and not that she's a woman. Her ideology is a big playing factor, isn't it, nowadays? Especially what's happened with dead naming and parents literally losing their children while they're alive, children butchering their bodies and finding out they're sterile and their new parts don't work and they can't go back on that decision. They're stuck with that broken body. And I know that YouTube's community loves to squash those. Well, YouTube's going to get a backlash too from people. I know that YouTube is supposedly all over the world. But you cannot tell me that YouTube allows freedom of speech. Its censorship is so bad, it will censor you saying a word like I just said, make you bleep it out. But it will show your children pornography. It's going to cost YouTube's reputation, and it's going to cost premium members like me. Now, it used to be if you're not a premium member, you could still upload videos. Well, I became a premium member because I watched a lot of YouTube. And that's the only reason. That's all I thought I was paying for. But when they tried to censor me, I canceled my membership. And all of a sudden, I couldn't even upload a 5-second video. So you can't tell me that there's not problems here with YouTube. But that can be dealt with later. There are other things that are more important. And what's more important right now is that the intelligence that I see in the younger generations that are fixing to go to the voting polls, they just are like us. They want to pay their bills. They want to have a house. They want to have a dream. They want to have the American dream. Now, Kamala Harris is against Americans having the American dream. And there's no doubt about that. And I don't care if they're going to argue about she was the border czar or she wasn't. Yes, she was. She was appointed in 2020 by Biden. And there is plenty of news out there where you can find Biden saying that she is the new border czar in 2020. We're in 2024. Almost her whole 4 years as vice president and border czar. Now, I also went and did a little research on my own. I tried to use the search engines and they all seem out of whack. And I tried to use AI and it's just as much out of whack as to what it will reveal to you. So you got to really dig. And what I found out was that as prosecutor, there were many cases where Kamala Harris would bargain down the penalties against predators of children, home invasions, car theft, and even murder. I also was able to, I couldn't get it on here. I'm not a video editor. I don't have a team. You see, this is my home, and I wouldn't have this home if my mother and father had not passed away. Now, I wouldn't have this home if they hadn't secured their home, and we're still paying taxes on it. And it's been paid off for 2013, 2014. It's been paid off since then. So, and we're still paying, and the taxes are ever rising here in Arkansas too. The first couple years I was here, we were paying 300 and some odd, and now I'm paying, well, last year I paid 800, just under 800 for the year. And why? I didn't make any improvements on my property. And then I realized, yeah, somebody down the road did. They're trying to put in an RV park, which is not taken off or doing so well because we're a very, very small community, and there are a bunch of places to go park an RV around here that you could rent pretty cheap. So him doing all those improvements got my taxes raised up by over $300. Now, I know the country is messed up, and I'm as scared as anybody else of Trump getting back into the White House, and for many reasons. He did a lot of bad things while he was in office. Well, the last part of his term. He did a lot of really good things in the beginning of it. But he started to act like a total wad, if you will, towards the end. And I watched my mother, who was dying, watching our White House and other capitals being defaced and broke into, and just violence unbelievable. She grew up through the really hard times in America. You know, the Great Depression was her early childhood, and then, yeah. So, listen, whatever your kids are thinking about slavery and how they were oppressed, please start to remember that there was slavery all over the United States in its early years. And they were of many ethnicities, and including white women. We were owned. We were property. And I know people screaming, no, I was a slave because I was black. You were not. After the war, many Africans migrated to the United States because they were thinking, well, now I can get paid to work on these farms. They didn't realize they'd get paid less than a penny on the dollar, but they came here in mass numbers on their own. Nobody sold them. They came on their own. And then there were all of the ones coming out of the European areas who were thinking, here's our chance for the first time. We can own land. We can farm. We all have, all the things that their countries like Spain and the United Kingdom and Britain and all of them oppressed the average person to have. I know that this is like a history lesson you guys have never had, but it's maybe one you need to have, because I don't want my country segregated by color anymore. I'm tired of hearing white hate, and I'm tired of hearing black hate. I don't hear a whole lot about the Asian community because they're usually a pretty quiet people until you piss them off and they come at you to kill you. But they're people too, and they deserve to be treated with decency. Don't we all? I hear all these Christians spouting all of this stuff, but not once do I hear them saying the parts of the Bible that matter the most. Judge not thy neighbor. lest ye be judged. Now, I don't subscribe to any religion. No religion can claim me. I'm an American. I'm free from a religion. But I still believe in God. And I still believe in morality, in the goodness of my fellow man. I'm just not seeing it on YouTube. So please, American Granny out. I love y'all.